why are we even here? Let's start there. What are we doing?
What are we doing? Okay, well, where are we? We're at Glad to Talk Sports. I'm your host, Miro Gladovic, here with Morgan Barkas, my co-host. We're unique, I think. We're going to be hopefully a unique sports podcast. I wanted to set about doing a podcast that is more than just talking about sports. I want it to, resonate with anyone that enjoys great topical discussions. So obviously the foundation of it will be sports topics. But as a sports professional, I've spent a lifetime in the sports industry, a former soccer player, FIFA agent, consultant to European soccer teams, and having lived in the States for more than 15 years, I've written for numerous sports media outlets such as sportsbusinessjournal.com. So I wanted to encapsulate all of that experience and perspective into a podcast and not only make it palatable for sports fans, but non-sports savvy people like my co-host, which is the reason I invited Morgan on.
I have so many questions. Okay, so this soccer business, are we talking like little kid and then you were either pushing yourself or your parents were pushing you to go pro, or like how did that work?
Yeah, I had growing up, I grew up in Australia to Croatian parents, and if you're Croatian, it's kind of like a Brazilian thing. Soccer is in your blood. But I also had a fascination for American sports growing up. So I had, this unique kind of brought up in Australia, playing and watching cricket and Australian rules football and rugby, and then also, playing soccer, which is a European game, and then also having, this this passion for American sports such as baseball and basketball and American football. So, I mix that into all, one bag, and it's kind of like a very eclectic, unique take on world sports.
Did you play the American sports too? Did they have those in Australia?
No, I didn't play them, but I loved watching, American football, and, loved watching Michael Jordan and, baseball, which, is growing in Australia. But back then, it was just a thrill of American sports. It was so different. In Australia, we have cricket, we have Australian rules football, and rugby, which are the three top sports. But then in Europe, it's mainly just soccer, soccer, soccer. So the US was unique in terms of that, playing sports that the rest of the world didn't really play, such as American football, baseball, and basketball.
What about wearing all the gear? I'm thinking, were people wearing Jordans back in the day? I mean, people are still rocking Jordans decades later.
They were and did, and yeah, if you go to Australia now, you'd think you were in the US when you looked around and saw what people are wearing.
Okay, what about talking about football though? Because I mean, let's be real. Football, America, we only have one version of that. But if you're going to talk football in Australia, it's like, wait, which one? The American or ours?
And there's actually two codes in Australia. There's Australian rules football and rugby as well. So
Oh,
Australia is really unique in the sense that there isn't a national sport when it comes to football. So it's geographical. So the top half of Australia follows a rugby league, which is based on rugby union, and you have a league that is made up of about 90% of teams from Sydney and Brisbane, which are the northern cities. And then you have Australian rules football, which is predominant in the south. So you have Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, and Tasmania. And everyone there is into Australian rules football and doesn't really care about rugby. You go to Sydney and Brisbane, and it's the reverse. Everybody loves rugby. And while there are Australian Football League teams there, they're kind of like pushed aside. If you turn on the TV, you probably wouldn't see it on the nightly news. But that's how divided Australia is when it comes to, and there's a real disconnect, with the people as well. So people from Melbourne and Sydney are a bit like people from LA and New York, very kind of competitive, thinks one, city's, better than the
better than the
other.
other. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, there's totally a total disconnect when it comes to football because they love rugby. And, me being from Melbourne, I love Australian rules football.
No, all this sports, as an adult, did you all the way through and then you're like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be a professional? And the perspective you have now, being in the sport with this podcast, like what are you hoping to share with people, or What message do you want to get out?
Well, just that, what I just shared with you right now, just enlighten people and hopefully, you know, make it intriguing. Like I bet if you probably that's the first time you probably heard about
Yep.
what football is in Australia, and that's the exact foundation of what I want to talk about on the podcast. It's subject matters that aren't always discussed on sports shows or podcasts, and just make them really kind of relatable.
Mhm. All right. So, what do you got for me?
Okay, so now that we've unexpectedly discussed football in Australia, so with the podcast, I really wanted to make it like, what in the world is happening in sports in America? From the point of view of if you were not an American and you don't really follow American sports, but hey, this is going on at the moment in America, and that's what people are talking about and following. And vice versa, I wanted also do a segment where what in the world is happening in international sports for Americans who are, you know, very insular and they don't really kind of follow sports outside of North America because the sports market in North America is saturated as it is. So
Mm.
they don't really know a lot of times what's going on outside of their borders. And that's what I want to discuss today. What in the world is happening in sports outside of America? And
Are the
being March,
fans as crazy? Because I feel like in America, especially football, but they get pretty riled up, and I feel like football in other countries, like you mentioned, Brazil, people go bananas. So, is it like having seen both sides of it? What are the fans like? Like, what are the differences and what are the similarities?
they're pretty consistent. They're
Okay.
pretty consistent throughout the world, from Australia to Europe to Asia to Africa to North and South America. Yeah, it's yeah, they're very fanatic. Fans are fans, That's why it makes me laugh whenever I watch an interview and a player talks about how special their fans are. Like they're nuts everywhere. Come on, it's like no, we have the best fans. No, we have the best fans. No, they're all nuts. It's just a
Do,
matter of how nuts they are.
do they tailgate everywhere too?
Tailgating, no, actually, that's an American thing. Yeah,
We like to stand around and get drunk before the game.
that's what they do. Like in Australia, you go to the pub before a cricket game or
Okay.
a football game. In Europe, it's the same deal. Hooligans actually in Europe will, they'll actually arrange to meet the rival, supporters, and sometimes
Wait. Stop. Who is the hooligans? Is this a casual name you just threw out, or is this like a sports team?
it's a certain element of fans. It's basically they're kind of like the violent fans, the thugs that take it to
Okay.
the extreme. So I used to be a FIFA agent in Europe, and they used to tell me that in Germany, where I was based, fans, if I'm a Bayern Munich fan and they're playing, FC Cologne this week, fans will actually arrange to meet at a certain location to have a fight before the game. So it's pretty insane. I don't know if it still goes on, but yeah. And in England, especially, that's where hooliganism was invented. So English hooligan fans, they actually get together, they fight, they cause all kinds of mayhem, and then they export that. So the English national soccer team, when they play internationally, these fans, these hooligans, they'll, like, if they're playing Germany, they'll go to Germany that Friday night before the Sunday game and start, smashing up the place and causing, riots and some, not all the time, but that's where the hooligan element is in
What are
soccer,
they fighting about? Just like our guys are cooler than your guys?
pretty much.
Okay. And okay, before you go on, one more question. What is a FIFA agent? What does he do?
It's basically, have you seen the movie Jerry Maguire?
Yes?
Yeah, that was me. So,
But
and that was
for
literally me
football.
because for soccer, for European soccer.
Okay.
So it's basically a sports agent representing professional athletes and
Hmm.
negotiating their contracts and babysitting them and all that
I
comes
bet you got some
along with.
stories.
There's plenty of stories. So, and it was literally, you get to do and see things that most people never do. So, and that's part of that, perspective that I have.
Well, I could get you lost in stories, but go ahead. You were going to tell me something else.
So I was going to discuss what in the world is happening in international sports. Being March, normally in America it's March Madness, and I'm not a big college hoops fan. I'm guessing you're not too.
Yeah. Could care less.
Yeah, I love my sports, but I can't get into the college hoops.
You
And
know what though? My brother, I don't know that it's still true. When we were younger, I mean, yes, the Dallas Cowboys. He was all about the Dallas Cowboys when I was a kid. We were kids, and then when Elliott Smith retired, Emmett Smith. I mixed this up. Emmett
that's all
Smith.
right. That's what you're here for.
I
That's
have a cousin named Elliot. Anyway, when Emmett Smith retired, it was kind of like, eh. And so now he's a Packers fan because we're from Wisconsin. Anyway, and that being said, what was I going to say after that? Before that?
the college, the
Oh
Cowboys.
yes, he liked college football because he said they tried. They seemed like they
Yeah,
tried harder because it's like they didn't already make it and get paid just to play. It was
right.
like they want to be seen. They're like giving everything because this could mean the rest of their life and
Right.
depending on like what team they're going to go to and how much they're going to get paid and whatever.
Yeah.
So he actually liked college football. I don't know about basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not diminishing it. It's great. It's crazy. Catch an occasional March Madness game. I just don't follow it. It's just, there's so much sports in North America. I love college football, but it's easier to follow because there's only a dozen games a year. Whereas the March Madness, the brackets, I'll leave that to the hardcore fans.
How about
But
the gamblers? Do you follow John Oliver?
yeah, I love John
Yeah,
Oliver.
I know, right? And he just did one on sports betting, and I didn't realize as dare I say rampant as it is, and that it's like not monitored the way casinos, for instance, here in the States. Like they
Right.
usually have to be in like it used to be they were on Native American reservations, and it was like you had to get like certain licensing to have it somewhere else, and there were a lot of rules and regulations. And now it seems like sports betting is just like
Yeah.
a free for all.
And funny you mention that because we've got one of the great sports prognosticators on the show later. So hold
Hey,
those questions for the vigorish when he comes on. But yeah, it has exploded. So and it's only going to get bigger and bigger. But
all right. So no
third
March
time,
Madness for you with the
no March
brackets.
Madness. No, we're not going to talk about March Madness. For me, March Madness is the start of the Formula One motor racing season. So. I've been a lifelong F1 fan, on and off over the years, depending on where the sport's at. Sometimes it kind of gets into a rut, I think, because you have like a one team or driver that dominates, and there's not a lot of racing going on. But March signaled the start of the new Formula One season, and being a non-sports fan yourself, I wanted to get your take on how much you know about Formula One, if anything.
Well, I have heard it's an extremely expensive sport to be in. Very few people can afford to be in it, and very few people make it to the big leagues, if you will. Also notice that most of the drivers are very good looking. That seems to be
I missed that.
almost a prerequisite.
I missed that part.
Yeah, I was like, wow, a lot of these guys are like Brad Pitt types. Anyway, and now I know Brad Pitt's into Formula One too. So hey, other than that, I don't know much about it. I don't know how many times a year they race. Yeah, I don't know any of that.
That's a fair assessment. So they do about 25 races a year. That's grown over the years, all over the globe, obviously. There's now 3 races in the US. There used to only be one in Austin. They added Miami a couple of years ago, and last year they added Las Vegas. And they actually race close to midnight in Las Vegas. It's a weird time, yeah,
Why?
I think because of East Coast audiences, international audiences, and Vegas is a 24-hour city anyway, but it's been really disruptive to the locals there. But yeah, there's 3 races. It's only growing in the States. And you mentioned Brad Pitt. He is starring in a movie called F1 that's coming out in the summer. That I kind of cringed when I first saw it. I mean, this guy's what 60 years old, stepping into an F1 car, and the oldest drivers there in their early 40s. But I've seen some previews, and I'm more intrigued than I was originally. So, and I think that's going to only just raise the profile of the sport in the US. And so it's always interesting for me to discuss with people that aren't tuned in to a certain sport, and getting like you just shared your take about how much you know about it, and it's very limited. And I want to do a segment where I convince Morgan to watch an F1 race. Have you ever watched an F1 race?
Nope.
You never tuned in?
Nope. Like I said, clips. I mean, I listened to a podcast called Armchair Expert, and they had Danny. Is it Ricardo? Isn't he an F1 racer?
Very good, yeah.
So he was interviewed, and the host Dak Shepard fell in love with him because he likes anything that has a motor and goes fast. So they got along and they became buddies and went like motocrossing together and things like that. But no, I heard about it and never have on purpose watched.
So Daniel Ricciardo, he just left the sport. He's an Australian Formula One driver. He was in the sport, I think, for over a decade, drove for a number of teams. Didn't have much success in the last few years, so they kind of
Caught
pushed
him.
him out. Yeah,
Mm.
cut him
Yeah.
and replaced him. But he's probably one of the bigger personalities. He's always kind of like this larrikin, personality, always laughing, and he's done a lot of media in the US, a lot of talk shows. But the kind of the king of the sport at the moment is Lewis Hamilton. So Lewis Hamilton, do you know who he is? You've
No.
never heard of Lewis Hamilton?
No. If I saw his
Okay.
face, I might have been like,
You
yes.
probably, yeah, because he's been around now for a few years, a seven-time world champion. And part of the reason I got out of the sport uh, between 2015 and kind of 2019, pre-pandemic, because he was just winning every race, him and his teammate. So that was one of the periods in Formula One where his team Mercedes were winning 90% of the races,
What, and that
and
was boring to you because they have the best cars and they're the best
yeah.
drivers?
Well, is that a race if you watch one person go off from the start and not be challenged?
I guess, but yeah, I suppose it's like watching an American football game and the other team's getting crushed. You're like, yikes. Okay, well, this is exciting. Not at
That's
all.
ex- that's exactly how it's like. You watch it and it's like, why am I going to watch this guy? He gets to the first corner first and then just pulls away, and it's by the time you're 20 minutes in, he's got the race wrapped up, and it's like change
Oh,
channel.
so you're just watching a really fast car go round and round and round. Wait,
Pretty
now how
much.
many laps do they do? Because Daytona, don't they do it with what cars are those? NASCAR?
Yeah, NASCAR's, they're
Don't
those
they do
big.
like 100 odd laps?
Yeah, they do like 500 because they're going around in circles, and that's a valid question. They're averaging a very high rate of speed going around an oval track, whereas in Formula One there is no oval tracks. They still do about 200 miles over the course of a race, but every circuit's different. No ovals,
Mm.
completely different sport, and even with American Indy cars like the Indy 500, they're open wheelers. That's what Formula Ones are considered, open wheelers. So open wheelers are not NASCAR. It's basically like the term says, the wheels are exposed. So that's IndyCar, even a go kart. That's open wheel racing. You ever been in a go kart?
Mm, not that I recall bumper cars, and I didn't like it. I don't like getting jostled around like that. It's not fun.
Yeah. So open wheel racing cars, a little not so much like bumper cars, but as I said, the wheels are exposed. A lot more danger because if the wheels connect with another car, it can
Mm.
catapult a car. But generally, the fastest form of racing is open wheel. Is like the Indy cars in the US are kind of like the American version of Formula One.
Okay, so what are you trying to convince me of?
All right. So at the moment, the sport's really excited. As I said, March heralded in the first Formula One Grand Prix. It was held in Melbourne, Australia, my hometown. And so Lewis Hamilton, who's a seven-time world champion, is kind of like a Tom Brady scenario. When he left New England and went to Tampa. So Lewis Hamilton left Mercedes, where he was at for over 10 years, and has joined the most famous team in Formula One, which is Ferrari. So that to me is really exciting, seeing Lewis Hamilton in a red Ferrari, as opposed to seeing him in his black overalls in a silver Mercedes for many years. So that to me is one of the exciting elements. So I'm not sure if that is swaying you in any way.
Not particularly. It takes me back to when I lived in South Florida and this beautiful woman got out of a white Ferrari, and I was like, I want to be like her someday. But other than that, no, you haven't sold me.
Okay, well, the other great thing about it is, remember how I said I kind of lost interest in Formula One over the years because Lewis Hamilton was dominating?
Hmm.
So back in 2020, you definitely haven't probably heard of this name if you haven't heard of Lewis, Max Verstappen.
No.
So Max Verstappen, very young, he started racing in Formula One. He's a Dutch driver when he was in his teenage years. Yeah, and drives for Red Bull. Red Bull Racing were kind of like the biggest challenges to Mercedes. So back in 2021, Max Verstappen beat Lewis Hamilton to become world champion. And I loved it. It was exciting because it was the first time in many years that Mercedes weren't dominating. But what's happened since is, who do you think won again in 22, 23, and 24?
The Lewis guy.
No.
I don't know.
Do you remember the name I told you?
No.
Max Verstappen.
Oh, there, Max. Okay, wait. Now we need to pause
All
because
right.
Ferrari, I understand. Mercedes, I understand. Red Bull is not a car company. What do they do? How do they get a car? What kind of car are they driving?
That's a great question. They're driving a Red Bull.
It's a car? Who makes it?
That's a great question. So, yeah, so a lot of these teams, they get engines from. See, Ferrari make their own cars and make their own engines.
Okay.
Same with Mercedes. They make their own cars, they make their own engines. Then you have other teams. There's 10 teams. So other teams like Red Bull, they get engines from an engine supplier, and theirs was Honda for a lot of years. So Honda that don't want to be a team manufacturer in terms of building the car, building the engines. They said, listen, we'll build some engines for you, and you can stick them in your car and race them. So Red Bull were Red Bull Honda for a lot of years. And even other teams like Aston Martin is a Formula One team, but they use Mercedes engines. And there's another team called Haas, and they use Ferrari engines. So these teams that build engines and their own cars, they also give engines to other teams.
So technically, Red Bull is driving a what kind of engine?
Red Bull Honda.
So it's actually Honda. Okay.
Well, the engine's Honda, but the rest is all made by not Red Bull, where they make the drinks. They have a separate factory where they manufacture the racing cars.
Okay. Well, they drive a Honda in my mind. Okay.
Right, it's a Red Bull Honda. So, but if you see the racing car, it's got Red Bull all over it, and
Well, and Aston Martin is driving a Mercedes, right? Is that
exactly,
what you said? So technically.
yeah. So anyway, so in the last few years, and the way the crossover went from Lewis's dominance to Max's was pretty controversial, just in the manner of how they raced each other, crashing into each other, and
On
you
purpose?
know, uh, that's a great question. See, sometimes, yeah.
Hmm.
So they'll never admit that. But what happens in Formula One a lot is it's borderline on purpose, if that makes sense.
Even though those cars cost millions of dollars.
Millions. So they put themselves in a position where it's, six of one and half a dozen of the other. Like, I blame him. There's certain rules where going into a corner, you need to be, if you're on the inside, you need to be level, and then you get the inside line, the other person has to yield, right? Because there's no traffic lights. But a lot of times it's touch and go, it's millimeters, and both both drivers stubbornly don't pull out and hit each other, blame each other, and then it's really up for discussion whose fault it was.
Isn't the race done though? Because now you guys had a car crash and now it's over.
Oh yeah,
Is the
very
whole
much
race
so.
done, or does the third person in third place get to keep going? Oh, well, I guess I win this one.
That's exactly what happens.
Oh, well, then they sabotage their own race. That's silly.
Yeah, and that's a great point as well. But if they're winning in the championship and they knock out their rival, well then they basically protect themselves because they remain in the lead because, well, I'm not scoring points, but neither are you, but I'm winning by, 50 points in the championship. So good luck next time.
Your camera decided to give you a thumbs up on that one.
I know, right? I saw that. All right, so let me prep this for you. This is a snapshot of the Lewis Hamilton Max Verstappen rivalry and why they became fierce kind of enemies.
So they in real life don't like each other.
Not really.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm hitting play.
Right. So this is a crash that happened that you ask whether it's intentional, and a lot of people said that it was, giving him a little nudge and putting him off the track at close to 200 miles an hour.
He definitely did that on purpose. The way he barely. The only thing is that I mean, if he would have went the other way, let's say he wouldn't have gone the way he did, he would have stayed in front of him and almost made him crash too.
Yeah. So that was a
Um,
very, very controversial crash. That there was a lot of he said, she said, and yeah. So that's one of the main crashes that they have had. And if you look at the next one, this is yet another incident between Lewis and Max.
And there's Max Verstappen right behind Hamilton into the first chicane. Once again, it's wheel to wheel. Hamilton and Verstappen, and this time Verstappen and Hamilton have crashed out, and they are both out. As Hamilton came from his pit stop, rejoined the racetrack, Lando Norris was ahead, and in their desperation to stay ahead and to get ahead, the two championship protagonists have taken each other out of the Italian Grand Prix.
the guy in the lead, he was still in the lead, and it's almost like they took each other out for nothing.
And that's what I mean by when you ask, do they do it on purpose? They don't. But when you have two stubborn drivers at that caliber, neither willing to, give up their spot on the asphalt, then that's what happens.
Hmm. My question though, it's like now you're out of the race. Does it hurt their standing overall, or I mean, because now a bunch of people are going to finish ahead of them, quote unquote, because can't even finish the race, and all the other people can. So doesn't that affect their overall performance?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely, it does. It basically, it negates any point scoring at that Grand Prix. But again, when these guys were doing this, they were the number one and number two candidates. They were the leaders in the drivers' championship. So that's not really their concern, because their concern is beating each other. So sometimes, and they don't go out willingly wanting to crash out. No driver wants to crash out on purpose. But sometimes, if you're leading your opponent, you're probably going to be more inclined to be more stubborn and say, well, if you want to take me out, it's just going to keep a status quo between, me leading you in the championship.
So that's your theory. That's what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I think it influences, how a driver drives, because the driver who's trying to catch them in the championship, they've got to be more cautious.
Mm. Okay. And the guys that repair the cars are like, "Oh my god, you guys, stop! Now we have to keep putting more hundreds of thousands of dollars into these cars."
Pretty much,
I'm
yeah.
sure.
I
I
mean,
mean,
some
I'm
of these
assuming
guys,
it's not an insurance situation, so they're
no, there's no, unfortunately, the insurers will not get involved for some reason.
so in
Yeah.
terms of like tabloids and rumors, etc. I mean, we're not hearing about it, not that I know of, in mainstream media, if you will, are there gossipy things about, because like celebrities here in the States, so and so, and they're doing this, or oh my God, they're on the verge of divorce. No, they're not. That's just tabloids. Like what caliber of gossip is happening around this?
Relating to their rivalry and incidences like this,
Mm-hmm.
it's a great question too, because it depends where it's coming from. The English media love Lewis Hamilton, and they've been bashing Max for years, blaming him for all the incidences. And it just depends, like, on who your preference is, Max or Lewis. And for people that know the sport, everybody loves one, hates the other, because it's become such a fierce rivalry, and now Max has the upper hand. And yeah, there was quite a few crashes like that, and interchanges between them that really kind of helped build this really fierce competitive rivalry.
Okay. I still don't know what you're trying to convince me of.
So you're not convinced you want to watch a race yet?
Oh, no. I have
You
other
don't want to
things
see
to do.
Max versus Lewis in action yet,
Live, I would.
right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, my third tool I'm going to use is, have you seen a preview of the Brad Pitt F1 movie?
No, I have not. I should. I've seen stills of Brad Pitt, and he's been my favorite since I was a kid. So I saw
So
him in A
I have
River Runs Through It many years ago and was like, who is that man? And that was prior to the internet, so I had no idea who he was until he showed up in some magazine. I was like, oh my God. So then I watched every movie he ever did, including Bullet Train that came out not too long ago. So I'm sure I will catch this
saw
one
that.
as well. You know what, though? What's
There you
interesting?
go.
As much as I love Brad Pitt, I think he is literally the most handsome person that was ever created. And not even my type, but literally the most handsome human, man or woman. And what was interesting is one of the events, you know who the DJ or the musician is, Bad Bunny?
Yeah.
Brad was at some kind of event with him, and he seemed like he got kind of cocky, and he like put his hand, like Bad Bunny was standing there, and Brad like put his arm up on the wall to like stand in front of him, almost in a confrontational way, and was like almost like saying something to him as if he was like trying to razz him or be funny or something. But Bad Bunny's face was so serious and almost like I would love to hit this dude in the face right now, but I'm just gonna not say anything and look forward. And I was like, what did he say to him? I don't think that was a good interaction, and not on Bad Bunny's part. What did Brad Pitt say to that man? So that
Yeah.
kind of tainted my view of Brad a little bit, even though I really like Brad Pitt.
It's funny you should say that, because no, I love Brad Pitt too. I've seen all his movies.
He's amazing.
Yeah, he's incredible. Some of my favorite movies, like Seven, and not so much that train one, like that last one. It was interesting
It
though. It
was
was fun.
strange, but it was still like
Yeah, it
his
was.
acting was like I just thought this is the weirdest movie. It's like
Yeah,
almost anime in a way,
yeah,
and yet he
right.
is just it's like he just gets better and better. Everything like a river runs through it, and what's that one? Legend Falls and Meet Joe
Yeah.
Black. Like he just does these eccentric. Anyway, but okay, carry on. Sorry.
So yeah, so during the Formula One races, they have this thing leading up to the race itself, where all the cars are lined up on the grid, the starting grid, which is unique to Formula One. Like in American races, they start the race with a rolling start, so all the cars are doing about
Oh,
whatever
sure,
80,
sure,
100 miles
sure.
an hour.
Right. Like they're all
Whereas
moving.
In Formula One, they all start from a standing start, which is really dangerous, because you got 20 cars, 1,000 horsepower each, that accelerate, to 100, 60 miles an hour in 2 seconds and beyond. So there's a lot of energy on that. Anyway, so at the start of the race, people are allowed onto the track, and It's a bit like a nightclub. They put like this little rope around the cars, and you can't actually touch them or anything. And the mechanics guard it. But all these celebrities mingle among the drivers and the cars, and up until like the cars are ready to take off on their warm up lap. And Brad Pitt, he was spotted quite a few times at different races before they filming of Formula One, the movie, and so there's this former Formula One driver, Martin Brundle. He's part of the commentary team, British guy. He does this thing called the grid walk. So he just grabs a mic and a cameraman follows him, and he goes up and he bugs all the celebrities. That's pretty cool. So like he'll spot Michael Douglas, and Michael was great. He was like, hey, and he engage and he'll talk. But sometimes he'll go up to celebrities and they'll just like shoo him away. And yeah, it's quite hilarious. Like I remember once Shaquille O'Neal just snubbed him. He's like, "Do you want to? You got a word?" And he's like, "No, get away!" Like, so it's live on, it's live on TV, and there was an interchange with Brad Pitt where he was just like didn't want to be interviewed, and he's like, "Get away from me," kind of thing, and it was really awkward, and yeah, it was quite hilarious.
Was it just like a time and place thing? Because
Yeah, it
it's
was
not
like
like
during the
Brad is
grid.
new to the spotlight.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, but it's that grid walk. It's hilarious. Sometimes there's been singers that just like ignore him and just walk straight past him and be really rude and then explodes on social media. But yeah, I was surprised that Brad was awkward and was very reluctant and standoffish.
Yeah, I would think you'd want to like pump up Formula One a little bit. But
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of that, I'm going to have you watch the Formula One movie preview, and that's going to be my last tool to try and get you to
okay.
convince you to watch a race.
Some people look at Sonny Hayes. They see a guy who lives in a van, a gambling junkie who missed his shot, the best that never was. But I see possibility.
And if you don't love me now, we'll never.
My Rook is a phenomenal talent, but he's young.
Never break the chain.
You plus him, boom, I got a team.
I can still.
When was the last time you won a race?
Sunday, Daytona.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Formula One.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then same as you.
There's this new guy. He's old. He's such a prick. He's quick though.
If you had any constructive criticism for each other, what would it be?
Don't be such an ass.
dickhead. That was constructive.
Wow.
Did you win something? There's 20 other drivers still out on that track. Do you think any of them respect us?
They're saying Sonny Hayes isn't a has-been. He's a never was.
If the last thing I do is drive that car, I will take that life, man. 1,000 times.
I'm offering you an open seat in Formula One. The only place you could say, if you win, you are the absolute best in the world.
Never break the chain.
Well, that's a full body yes right there.
Yes to the movie, but is it a yes to watching a race potentially?
In real life, if it ever comes up.
Okay, so in real
See,
life,
I
but
need
that'll
all
be
that
more.
backstory and the action. I need to be there. It's like watching football. I don't want to watch that. I mean, I'd go to a game, but I'm not going to sit and watch it on purpose on TV.
But I just gave you the backstory. Max and Max
Yeah,
and Lewis
okay, yeah, that's
rivalry.
true.
Yeah. So maybe after you've here's the great thing, okay? See, I may not convince you that to watch the next race, right? But when the movie comes out, here's the great thing about the movie. So the movie comes out in the summer, right? And the way they filmed it is they actually got Brad in amongst the current drivers. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, whether they like it or actually Lewis Hamilton's a producer on it, but Max wasn't too happy about the movie. He could care less because obviously his rival is
I was
producing
just
it. So
gonna
he's
say
like,
probably because they're portraying, yeah.
well, who knows? I'm guessing Brad's going to be kicking their asses on the track. But the great thing is, when you watch the movie, you're going to remember. Oh my God, Miro told me about Max and Lewis, and you're going to be right on top of things, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'm betting that this "Can I Convince You" may not happen in the next race, but after you see the movie and you join the dots and you remember those crashes that you saw and my conversation, I think there's a chance I could convince you and the movie could convince you to go out and watch a race
How
after
long are
that.
these races? Can I get the highlights?
Yeah, you can. Well, it's a whole weekend. It's a whole weekend.
Oh,
So yeah, it's a 3 day. The first day is generally practice. It's just cars going around in circles, right? They time it, and it's kind of like it's an indicator of who's going to do well, but it doesn't mean anything. So that's on the Friday. So and then on Saturday they have qualifying. So they have qualifying. They have whoever goes the fastest gets further up on the starting grid. So and it's a knockout. So you have 20 drivers. I think for about 20 minutes, go full on, and then they cut the bottom five slowest drivers, and they go into the second stage of qualifying, and there's only 15 cars, and again they time it. They cut the bottom five, and then it's the last 10 for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, I think, and they go out and then they place them in first to 10th, and that's the way they start on the Sunday. So the Saturday is a big deal because the qualifying, and then Sunday's the race.
big deal for the drivers, big deal for the audience. Do people still go watch? I'm assuming some people
Oh
watch.
yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Like if you like the Miami Grand Prix has been ridiculously successful, and that's coming up. So again, it's a 3 day event. You buy your tickets, which we at the start of the show you said very expensive. You're right. It's expensive for the drivers to be in it, but it's also expensive to watch. So
Yeah.
generally, yeah, if you want to go like to the Miami Grand Prix, which I think is sold out, a 3 day pass could cost you, $1,500.
I was expecting more than that actually.
Really? Well, there are packages that, if you want VIP, you can pay like $50K.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's what I was guessing. Because for me, in Miami, Ultra is something I would like to do because I love EDM music, and I'm only going if I'm VIP. So that's why I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll save my money because I'm not standing on the ground where there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people pushing and shoving me. So
Yeah.
if I can be in a box somewhere, I will go to Ultra someday. So that's kind of how I'd feel about F1. I wouldn't have to need box. I would want to be outside, like listening and feeling the race, if you will. And I wouldn't want to be in the nosebleeds.
No, I mean, yeah, for me, I could never go watch a Formula One race and just be in the stands because it's very limiting as well. You only see a section of the track, and they've got TV screens around all over. But if I'm going to watch it on TV, I might as well be at home. So
Sure.
I'm the same, and I'm as a former sports agent, like whatever event I went to, I was always VIP because I'm there with the talent, so they
Yeah.
get you into all VIP sections. So I'm with you on that one, but the TV, I still got hope that I can convert you into a TV fan because it's not just the race, it's the spectacle behind it, it's the grid walk, it's the personalities, and
Well,
I
as you're
think the
saying
movie's going
this,
to
I'm
do
thinking
it.
maybe I do live near Chicago. Maybe there's like a viewing or something where it could be like hype. Because I'll promise you, I'm not going to sit in my apartment by myself and watch this. Not a chance in hell. And maybe if it's like there's a bar or something and it's like the whole day revolves around this event, then yeah, I'd probably do it.
Yeah, on the time thing, unless you want to go to a bar at 8 a.m., I don't think you'll be.
Oh, well then, no, I'm not watching F1.
All right, well, I'm going to hold out hope. Even though I didn't convince you right now to watch the next race, I'm
No.
holding out hope that
The movie.
by the time you watch the movie and you connect all the dots, as I said, I think you're going to potentially want to see a race following that.
I'll give you potentially.
I'll take that. And you'll probably go into it thinking, well, where's Brad Pitt? Where did he qualify?
I'll only be looking for him and the English guy that tries to get everybody to talk.
Oh, Martin Brundle, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on our first installment of Glad to Talk Sports. Hope to catch you on our next podcast.